Hi everyone! One question that I keep getting on live stream all the time is, how do I actually sort out my loot so quickly? And I can give you some tips on how you can optimize your downtime and speed up your town rotations. One thing that is important in Diablo 4 or in any RPG is just minimizing your downtime as much as possible. And I think a lot of people are wasting a lot of time in town trying to sort out their loot. And this is obviously something that I try to optimize as much as possible. So I can tell you how I do this. As you can see here, I just look at these items for like a split second and then I sort them out, I vendor them, and I go back in the next run. And this is important to keep up your efficiency, keep up your experience per hour, if you want to just like not waste time on the way to the 100, for example. But on the other hand, you also want to pick up a lot of loot because there can be potential upgrades. There can be items that could be worth hundreds of millions of gold if you sell them to other players. So of course, picking up loot is important in Diablo 4. Because, well, most people find most of their items by themselves and they don't really trade for them. So the system that I use is the mark as junk feature. So on PC at least, there's this space you can press and then you can mark them here. So you see they have like this little slash and they're grayed out, and this means that those are junk items. And then when you go to the vendor, you will vendor all of the junk pieces at once, or you can also go to the blacksmith and salvage all the junk at once. In the late game, usually you just vendor everything because you don't need any more materials at some point, but gold remains important all the way. So usually this is a very nice feature to just vendor everything at once. Now, the thing is, how do I actually decide what is an item worth keeping and what is not? And how do I do it so quickly? Well, it's actually fairly straightforward. In the case of weapons, what matters most is the item power. So for example, here a 765 dagger when I'm level 80 is like an absolute no-go. So I would never really touch anything that is like, below 790 item power. So let's say at this point at least. So here, for example, we have a 792 item power wand, but it has only one stat that is actually somewhat useful, which is crit damage, and then 3 pretty useless stats. And yeah, I could try to roll the second one on this, but in my case, I already have a pretty good sword here, as you can see. That is like near perfect, actually. And, this is going to be beaten only by like basically a higher item power version of the same stats. So in that case, weapons are basically sorted out by default, in my case already, because I already have a pretty good one. And then comes also the stats. So for everything that's not a weapon, anything that matters is just the stats on the item. So for armor pieces, for jewelry, you need to have, the right combination of stats, and well, most of them are pretty trash. So basically what I do is I just look for more than one stat that I don't want. So if I look at this pair of pants here, it literally has 4 stats that I do not want. So as soon as I see like, more than one that I don't want, this item is gone. This item is gone. This is gone. Yeah. So basically this is how I do it. So I look for the stuff that I don't want, and as soon as I see something I don't want, the item is basically trashed. Now, of course, there are some exceptions. For example, when you're fresh in Torment difficulty, you might be fine with like some suboptimal stats, with some, just really high item power weapons that give you like a massive damage upgrade, for example, and stuff like that. But for the most part, it's all about just like, getting a few decent pieces early on. And at that point, once I'm like kind of settled in Torment difficulty, for example, I just become a lot more aggressive in my choices with like items to keep versus items to salvage. So here you can see this here, anything that doesn't look good on first glance is just like salvage, salvage, salvage. And the thing is that because of this mark as junk feature, you can actually undo a mistake. So even if I accidentally mark something and then, like as I'm already checking the next item, I realized, oh, there was actually a lot of good stuff. I can just go back and unmark it, and I can keep it anyway. So this is kind of my trick that I use. And well, after sorting out like 50,000 items or something, of course, I have become pretty fast at doing this. But I think this is a relatively good system. Basically, just assume that everything is trash. Just kind of like mark everything like very freely. And if you do a mistake, you can undo the marking and you can save the item in your stash. Then, as I mentioned, for weapons, you scan for the item power first, and if that looks promising, then you can look at your stats. And for everything else, you always just scan for stats that you don't want, because those are plentiful, and the stats that you do want are very few. And in most cases, they don't really appear together. So it's quite easy to find items that don't have the stuff you want. In that case, it's very easy to look for stats that you don't want, because they always appear in your items. And whenever there's more than one stat I don't want, the item is gone, basically. That's already it for my little tutorial. This is how I do it. Hope that helps you. Maybe it's gonna speed up your town rotations as well. Other than that, I hope you liked this video. Wish you good luck, and see you guys next time.